guys, welcome back to my channel. This is my brother Austin. He is visiting in town. I asked him to do a video going over what kind of mindset is best to have when you're first gonna go and get your first psychic reading. It's nice to have his point of view because not only is it a male's perspective, but it's also a perspective of someone who developed their gifts over time and went into getting readings completely unfamiliar with any of it. So that's a view that I kind of want to have in my videos. I do want you guys to check in the description down below because I'm going to put any links to him down below. He does readings as well and he's really good at it. And he also has some music that you guys can check out. So if you want to go and check his links in this description down below after the video, please go do that and send him some love. Alright, so the first question I want to go over is like, what is a psychic reading? I feel like it's mostly just someone who is kind of a speaker or a radio per se for the upper realms and kind of transmuting the energy and the messages that need to get through from spirit to the person that's being read.
Yeah, it's like the person who's reading is trying their best to develop clarity in themselves so that they can just basically be a pass-through for some sensitivity that they have that you don't have. Or also, even if you are sensitive, it's hard to read yourself and see what is going on in your own life sometimes. So having somebody else act as a sensitive, either psychically sensitive in like seeing things or hearing things or whatever the gift is, they're basically trying to just be clear and open and tune into you and allow what they perceive to pass through to you in the clearest, purest form so that you can get like whatever they're seeing, basically, of your situation.
Even fellow psychics get readings from each other. I can read for myself, but it's going to be very different than if Erica reads for me or if Austin reads for me because his energy is not so entangled in the situation that I'm in. So he's able to get a clearer perspective that's not biased towards the situation, even if it's something that's going on with me. For example, let's use like a relationship thing. He's probably going to be a little bit biased in that, so I probably go to someone else. But in that sense, it just...
Don't date my little sister!
But it just gives like a better perspective from someone else who's not really in the situation. Another question that people commonly have is, I'm scared to get a reading because I'm scared of something negative or bad or scary coming up. As a reader, I've had very, very few times when like really negative things come through. And most of the time when it's negative, it's not negative in the sense of like you'll die. It's more negative of like this is a really heavy transitional period or something like that you're going through, but it's not like a super heavy like you're never going to get out of this. It's always just like this is what you should expect and be ready for.
If it shows you that you're in a difficult situation, it oftentimes enlightens you as to why it's difficult and what you could do to improve your part of the situation.
I can totally, completely understand why people would be afraid of that, but I also just encourage you to not let that hold you back from getting a reading if you really feel that you want one, because there's always bad things in life. There's always going to be the heavy to the light. I mean, there's always going to be that balance. So don't be afraid of the balance coming through. There always will be the brighter sides. If you get a reading that is very, 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 very negative and it's just all just like, I guess, fear-based and stuff like that, think about how you go into the reading and how you're asking your question. If you're asking, I'm so scared this is going to happen, is it going to happen? Then you're already putting fear into that reading and it's mirroring what you're kind of putting in.
Yeah, and that level of energy often like manifests that thing towards you.
Yeah. Fear is very powerful.
Yes.
It's a very powerful energy, just like happiness is. It's like a light and dark.
Yeah. I had a really bad reading one time. Or it wasn't a bad reading. No, but it was important that I heard it because I was concerned about infidelity with somebody that I was with. And it was right when I had the first really strong hint that, okay, things are bad. And I immediately went and I got a reading from somebody. They were reluctant because it was like hard, because it was like a heavy reading.
Yeah, it's hard for us to tell you guys that stuff, like, trust me.
But it was like, it helped me weigh the situation more because what she pointed out through her intuition was that it was a situation that could be fixed, but it would require a lot of effort and a lot of sacrifices, and it helped me weigh it and say, you know, I need to end this relationship. So it was heavy, but it helped me get a clear view of what I wanted for myself and what I was looking for.
Right. And it kind of gives you a better perspective of like what you would be getting into if you chose to keep moving forward with that. It is scary to get a reading, especially when you're scared of the outcome, but it gives you a better view of like what you're getting into. If you're going to go forward with this one thing, how it would probably go, whether it be really hard or it would be easy, it gives you a better perspective and a better idea of, do I want to get into this, or do I want to just kind of go down a path that's more in line of what I want to be doing, or lighter or something like that.
Sometimes we want to do hard things.
Yeah, which I don't know why we choose these things. What the heck were you thinking? Like my higher self gets so much talk every single day because I'm just like, what the heck were you thinking?
I started this game on hard mode. Expert.
We all changed to easy mode at the end because we're all just like, oh shit, this is hard.
Some of us haven't changed.
The next question is the death card. I just want to go over this really quick because this is a huge worry for a lot of people that come to me. They're like, I don't want to get the death card. I'm so afraid of it. It's kind of understandable because the death card seems very scary. It's called the death card. That's like, oh, you're gonna die card. That's bad. But it's actually a really good card. It really is. At first, I would see it as like a negative card, but the more, because it came up so many times in my readings and it was terrifying, and I was like, oh no, not the death card. But honestly, I see it as such a positive card now. When it comes in, you know that there's no avoiding it. It is a situation or a change that is unavoidable. You can't go around it. Like, the only way to is through, and it's like, that's what the death card is. It's most of the time transition.
It's the climax of the story.
Right. Yeah. It's like, this is a changing point for you. This is the crossroads. And it's a very powerful card. It's one of my favorite cards now, not because my goth side really likes it, but like, it's a good card. It really is. If you go in being afraid of the death card, just understand that it's most of the time, like 99% of the time, it usually is just a big transformation or change that's going to come. If you look at it that way, it's so much less scary. So don't worry about the death card, guys. Another question that I get asked a lot is, what are you tapping into, or what are you getting energy from when you do reading for someone? I do want to point out that this is different for everyone, so I'm just talking from how I do it in my practice, because everybody is different and everybody tunes into different energies. For me, I usually go in the way that I go into cleansing a house, which is kind of welcoming in any spirits or entities or energies around that person that are helping for the highest good of that person. So they have good intentions for that person. They want the best for them. They're trying to give them tools to move forward and make progress and things like that. And it just kind of like makes this, I guess, barrier to anything perceived as negative to come through and like influence the reading. It doesn't mean that putting that intention out won't have heavy or sad or seemingly negative things come up in the reading, but it does help me feel better about where I'm getting the information from, because it just helps me know, okay, I'm getting it from angels, I'm getting it from fairies, I'm getting it from all of the beings that have the higher intent of that person in mind.
When I began giving readings, it was very much like logical, and I was just like, I just need to know that I shuffled the cards real well, and that I used my offhand, because I typically write with my right hand, and I want to use like the parts of my body that are less practiced so that I can kind of fumble and be like more just things will happen accidentally. But now things have changed a little bit for me. After I've gotten more comfortable with what I do, I tend to start with just like trying to clear my mind, clear my own intentions, clear my motives. And then where I start to tap in is kind of like engaging my imagination. Like, I fill my imagination with thoughts of the situation that I'm trying to think about. And I'll just come up with imagery almost in my head of like what I'm seeing. And at first it's just me spurring it on with, I'm just trying to think of the person's face, what they're talking about doing, maybe where the location they are, what I smell, what I hear, like things like that, and I'm just making an image in my head. But then it starts to kind of get guided around, and it starts to get taken away from me a little bit, and new things pop up that I was like, I'm not really sure where this came from.
Right.
And so I feel like now I'm learning to set the stage and open up that way, but it's still very difficult for me because I'm more of a logical mind, and I don't want to be just making stuff up.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, there are things that I don't know why they come up, and I don't know where they come from, and I don't have explanations. And when I'm confident that it's like that, I'm just confident that it's okay to like put that forward, because that's what my job is as an intuitive.
This is one that you brought up of how people view readings. You mentioned that readings are less like directions and more of a map.
So it's like if you were somewhere and you went to somebody and you said, can you give me directions to get back on the I-5 or something? They could give you a list of directions, and that would be more like maybe a counselor.
Yeah.
Or like
take a left here.
Yeah.
Take a right at this street.
This is what I think you should do. But a lot of the times readings aren't really performed in that way. I mean, sure, some readers will probably give you advice, but more often than not, it's more been like a map where they don't tell you where to go or how to get there. They just show you where you are.
Yeah.
And what's going on around you. And it might confirm things in your mind that you were unsure about. Mm-hmm. Like, oh yeah, that is the pattern that's happening right now. Or it might twist your perception on something and like make you think about something differently, maybe open you up to a different way of thinking about where you are. And so it doesn't give you directions, but it gives you all the information you need to make your own directions. Mm-hmm. And to follow your own idea of what you should do, but it gives you the bird's eye view of where you are at.
Yeah, because I was talking to him and I was saying, when you look at life as a timeline, which seems very just plain to me because there's like all these different dimensions and like parallel universes and stuff like that. So it gets more complicated, but this is like the simplified version of what I think in my head. So you see the timeline of your life, right? And you have the birth and the death, right? And then you have all these things in between. So everybody has these certain points in their lives where it's like things you can't avoid. Like maybe you chose when you were up there making decisions for you down here, okay, I want to have a kid at 18. I want to get married and be a lawyer at 20. Those are set points in your timeline that you can't really avoid. Like no matter what, they're going to happen. No matter what kind of different path you take, it's always going to lead to that point. So the timeline right here where it has all these little dots, and then you have all these different streams that go out from that different point and then come back to that certain point and then branch off again. So you can take any of these different points, but they're all going to lead to that one point. And sometimes those points will come up in readings, but sometimes they won't. And sometimes you won't see them coming. But ultimately, it's like that saying, if it's going to happen, it's going to happen whether you want it to or not. If it's not meant to happen, it won't happen whether you want it to or not. It's like you can't mess up, but you feel like you're messing up. Like you feel like you're so off track, but you're just at that peak of that branch, and then you're coming back down. Because it's always going to come to those points. Yeah, it is kind of like a map. And the truth is, like, sometimes they can kind of be like, go north, but they won't say specific, like, go down Wood Street or go left at this turn. They'll be like, head north, and that's where you'll find peace or whatever. And it's very, very frustrating. Like, I just want to point it out. It's frustrating for us too, because we want answers for you guys, and sometimes they're just like, tell them to go north. And I'm like, can you give me directions? They're like, no. Another question is, what if I don't like my reading? And this is really hard because I'm a people pleaser.
Yeah, I always want people to feel good. One time I gave a reading, though, that this girl was really excited about her boyfriend that she had, and they were doing a long-distance relationship coast to coast. And so she asked me to read about it, and I read that there was, like, some infidelity going on. And it was, like, not extremely clear, but it shed a lot of doubt on, like, where things were going with them. Right. And it was just kind of heavy, and I was like, okay, like, sorry that that's what it was. But it turned out to be true. Things were not going as well between them as she thought, and she thanked me later because she's like, your reading was like spot on, even though it was, you know, at the time we didn't understand it. So if you don't like your reading, you might just need to be open-minded about it and just keep your eyes open to in your life. Maybe if you don't like your reading, maybe you don't want to change anything immediately on it. It's true that you could go and have a poor reading somewhere. It's possible. But the thing is, a lot of the time, it's that we're so stuck in our ways that we can't see where the truths are and how it's going to come forth. I've had like astrological readings of myself, and I'm not like that. And then it's like 10 years later, I'm like, I've been doing this my entire life. Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of times readings can show us the ugly truth. It's hard to accept because we're just like, oh, well, I'm not someone who's very fickle. But sometimes that's our tendency. And it doesn't mean that that's how we're always going to be. Readings are pretty much like a mirror. But it's also showing us paths that we're not seeing. Readings just give you kind of a better view of what's happening around you. Someone doesn't get a reading because everything is going well in their life.
Right.
They get a reading because they're feeling lost, or they're feeling unsure, or they're feeling sad, or they want some hope of what's going to happen or what could happen. Another thing is, like, a lot of people are like, oh, well, this reading was just not accurate for me. You also have to take into account of whether they're looking into a forecast of the future, or if they're looking into past situations or present situations. Because if they're looking into the future, it's a good possibility that things could actually happen, but it's also a big possibility that they couldn't. So you also have to keep that in mind, that future casts are all based on the energy of the moment. So any decision that you are thinking about or deciding on or set on in your head, it's going to reflect that. So if I'm set on moving, it's going to be like, okay, if you move, this is what will happen. Or if I was like, oh, I don't want to move, and it says, okay, if you don't move, this is what's going to happen, because that's the energy I have going into it. All right, so another question is, what is my destiny? This, I feel like, goes into free will, which is kind of hard, because, like, it kind of goes into the timeline, though, because ultimately your destiny is, I feel like, those set points in your lifetime that you can't avoid, and those are your, like, destiny points.
They're
right?
Like the soul contract.
Right.
They're like the deep things that you really, really wanted to do with this life.
Yeah.
And some of them are maybe ironic, such as like having a limb amputated in you, or having some kind of debilitating disorder.
Yeah.
Even though that can be really hard to swallow, that you would choose that for any reason, there's some kind of strength or challenge that the soul faces that it actually loves that sort of story. It's actually like an incredible story of like overcoming challenges. Sometimes the soul chooses something like that,
Right.
like really big hardship, or being born into really hard circumstances.
That is a hard pill as well, because even with me, there's been experiences in my life where I'm just like, that shouldn't have happened. Like, there's no way that should have happened. That was awful. It's not to say that we're not allowed to, like, feel sad or like experience the sadness or guilt or anger over those situations.
You gotta let yourself feel.
Because that's part of the human experience. Like,
that's also what we came here to do, is to feel things.
Yeah, we came down to experience being a human and experience the things we're going through and the things we learn. And if you're not experiencing it, you're gonna have to do it again. Like, you're gonna be like, oh man, I didn't do that fully, so I'm gonna have to go back and do it again. Looks like we're gonna have to get the leg amputated again, but that's okay, we'll just go through it again.
Because I didn't care, because I got too spiritual.
But like, it is upsetting, and it's okay to be upset about stuff like that. But at the end of the road, and after you've thought about it, there's a lot of experiences that I hated in my life. And I hate that I, for some reason, chose that. But at the same time, I completely understand why I went through that. Because I wouldn't be the person I was today if I didn't go through that. And I wouldn't be able to help the people I help today if I didn't go through that. So there is a purpose for it. It just seems really sucky at the time when it happens.
I think that there's a whole lot of minor things that I've been through that I could have avoided if I were more aware at the time of certain things, and I could have still learned the lesson that I needed to learn without as much of a mistake. I think to say that every single minor mistake we've ever made was like predestined is kind of a silly thing.
Yeah, well, that's the free will part.
The big things that like shape our character through life and maybe even give us the will to live in some
Right.
cases.
Right.
Those things are like definitely part of our destiny.
Yeah, you mentioning the minor things, it comes back to those branches off of the different paths you can take.
Do you choose the hard lesson or the easy lesson?
Right, like do you choose the more straightforward path, or do you choose the path that goes way up here and way back down? Like, it really depends on what you choose. And it doesn't mean there aren't tiny little veins in between those where you can cut back to an easier path. It just means, are you going to learn it the hard way or the easy way? And we all hope that we would learn it the easy way.
Yeah, that'd be nice.
Yeah, that would be a really nice bonus. Another question is, what should I expect? If you go to a psychic that's just giving you basic information, just be wary. I don't want to make it seem that every time you get a reading there's going to be this mind-blowing experience, like your dad is coming through and he has blue eyes and brown hair and he looks like this, and you're just like, oh my god,
Right.
like that's amazing. It's not going to be like that every single time.
Right.
And it also depends on how you're going into it and what you're asking and what you're expecting. But if someone is saying very basic things where like kind of anybody could guess it, if the whole reading is that, just be kind of wary of that, because that's not someone digging deep and connecting to that person's energy.
Right. If it's not obvious how the reading makes sense in your life,
Right.
that could be a sign that it's poor reading.
Right. And it's not to say that that person doesn't have intuitive abilities or the ability to read.
Everybody has off days.
Yeah, and it could be a bad reading.
Yeah.
But it also could be a scam. If they say, oh, you have this block against money and you need to buy this $700 candle to get it fixed, just be really, really cautious about that,
Because there's many ways of working on
and I feel like ultimately
that could just be the hard lesson.
Yeah, and I feel like ultimately good readers will want to empower you to help you move through that block yourself, or make that candle yourself rather than buying it from someone else. And if they do feel cautious about making it themselves, they'll point you towards something that they've made, but it's not like scammy. It's not like you need this. It's just, yeah, this will help, but it's not necessary.
It is nice, though, once you trust somebody, that you just go to them and you know that their recommendations are going to be good. You know that whatever they're going to give you is going to be something that's really high quality. So at that point, there's like a different thing.
Yeah, I'm not saying expensive things are bad, because sometimes you can invest a lot and really get a lot back from it.
Yeah.
It's mostly
But make a connection first.
Yeah, make sure that you trust that person and they've given you multiple reasons to trust them.
I like
and
to
it's
get
not just-
references. I haven't actually sought psychic readings without references. I almost always go from a reference.
Yeah, and maybe just, look them up online, see if they have videos online or if they have a website where you can learn more about them. But if you have a feeling that something is off, just go to someone else. Don't stick with someone because, oh, they're the closest psychic in my neighborhood. Just go online or go out to a different store and just expand your boundaries to see if there's someone else that connects with your energy better.
Sometimes it's good to actually get multiple intuitive takes on your situation, and maybe even people who do different things, because if it's not clicking from one person, it might click with the other person. For me, I know that's how it's been, bounce back and forth between two psychics, getting better and better.
And the good part is, if they all have a common theme, then you know that that's the really big thing that the message is trying to convey, is that there's that one thing in each reading that's similar or the same, and you're just like, okay, that's the message that they have for me, is I need to fix my car headlight because it's out and like everybody told me that. So if they're all saying the same thing, take notice, please. What kind of questions should I ask? This is obviously a very personal thing because it changes person to person and what they're going through, but look more at the reading as a way to get a overview of what's happening and maybe a slight direction in towards the right path. Don't look for specific directions of date this person or take this job. It doesn't mean that that won't come up, but don't go in expecting that. If you go in expecting specific instructions of like, take a step here and take a step here, you're going to be disappointed, because not all readings are like that, and it's very rare when they are. And even if they are and you get a reading from the same person later, it might not be. So just go in with like an open mind. Is this person beneficial for me to have in my life? That's a good question to ask. But if you ask, is this my soulmate? That's a harder question to ask because it's very definite.
Right.
Whereas, like, if that person benefits you, it makes sense to keep them in your life. But if they don't, then, you know, you're out. It's just better to go in with an open mind, I feel like.
Yeah. I think it's better to ask about situations than to ask for directions or something, or yes/no questions, or answers with numbers, or answers with dates.
It's so variable.
It changes all the time.
Yeah.
A forecast is based on what we're looking at right now that we think is going to go towards the future, but
even weather forecasts aren't accurate.
yeah, in a free will world, things can shift and change. And
the clouds go wherever they want to go.
You can see what's up, and you can make a lot of effort, and you can change what might be coming in the future. The minor things.
Not the major things. You can't avoid those. Sorry.
For
Sorry,
everything
guys.
else, you're never given more than you can handle.
Yeah. So that's all of our questions we had. Obviously, if you guys have more questions that we didn't cover in this video, please feel free to leave them in the comments down below. I would love to hear them. I'll have Austin sneaking around on there and possibly answering questions too, because I want to get him more exposure. So go check him out, guys. Like, he has a YouTube channel too. Check him out. Give him some love. If you have any video suggestions for me, please leave them in the comments down below as well. If you liked this video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you want to see more videos from me. Please hit the bell notification if you want to know when I post a new video or when I go live. I hope you guys have a wonderful day, and I will talk to you guys later. Bye. Okay, most of the time, like 99% of the time, it usually is just a big transmission. Don't worry about the death card, guys.
If you think about it, most of the time we're really terrified of the death card, but I think that the death card is actually afraid of us.
Yes, our death cards are all
It's like a
hiding in their
spider.
drawers. Oh, spiders!
Oh no, please don't draw me!
Spideys! Yeah, I've started transporting spiders outside. I still am terrified of them, but I'm just like, I just want to save you now. Like, I'm so sorry, but I'm so scared of you. Like, I had to transport one outside today. I was just like, oh, don't be afraid, but I'm really afraid of you right now. And it was like, get me out, get me out.
Seeing another girl locally.
Sorry,
Yeah.
my stomach is making noises. Sorry, just like, wah, wah, wah.
No.
Okay, go ahead. It kind of makes me think of the Hangman card because oh yeah,
It's done.
it's done. It's so late. It's like
It did.
I feel like it's no, that's our mine. We all have like the same glasses. People are gonna be like, why does she have the red points on her nose? Guys, because I wear glasses and I didn't want to have it glare in the camera.
All right.